Hey, what's up? Dusk here. I have a really short and sweet review for you on Enigma of Fear. I've been streaming this game and it has been really cool. Basically, in a nutshell, it is a horror survival game, kind of like Alan Wake, kind of like Resident Evil. There are puzzles and there are combats and there are even boss fights. However, the element that takes single center stage what takes center stage are the puzzles for this game. They are extremely in-depth puzzles. And if that sounds like something you're interested in, a horror game that actually has like actual elaborate puzzles, then like enough said, you should just go out and buy the game. You'll love it. But there are a few caveats that I feel like I have to give people heads up on. And this isn't really basically, like, the game's not perfect, right? Of course, no game is. So I just want to give you a heads up on the parts that aren't perfect so that you don't get stumbled by those and you can enjoy, the majority of the game, which is absolutely fantastic. I don't want to spoil anything about it, but I think describing it as like, Alan Wake or Resident Evil, but like actually really in-depth puzzles tells you everything you need to know. The graphics are this really facing the wrong way. This really interesting blend of 2D pixel art and actual 3D assets, which creates a really interesting illusion in your brain. It makes the 3D pixel art, it makes the 2D pixel sprites look 3D to your brain when you're turning and moving around. You kind of forget that they're 2D. So they've just done a really good job on their artwork and the assets and the game and the puzzles, and the characters are also, for the most part, pretty good. Everything is voice acted. That's pretty cool. And, God, did I mention the storyline? It's a pretty good storyline. I like the storyline. So, yeah, like, that's just it, without spoiling anything. Yeah. So, what are some of the caveats here that might be a turnoff for some people? Well, one of them is a branch of storyline where you take control of a character named Sam. And you'll understand how you do that later. But Sam's arc takes him to do a style of ARG puzzle, which is where you go outside the game and have to look on your own computer for files, kind of like Doki Doki. Except I don't think Enigma Fear handles that nearly as good as Doki does. But that whole part of the game is optional, and I advise everybody to skip that part of the game. The only people who are going to enjoy the that arc of puzzles are people who just like to dig for needles and haystacks and stuff like that, because a lot of the well, not a lot, because I quit after 3. Some of the puzzles I know for sure require you to have pre-existing knowledge about certain things, and if you don't, you just can't solve the puzzle. So you're going to be doing a lot of googling and stuff. But like I said, that part is optional. It was not fun, and it was definitely detracting from the rest of the game, so I quit. I quit the Sam arc myself. However, I do know of people who have, dug into those puzzles and have quite enjoyed literally just having to do their own research and look for a needle in a haystack. So maybe that's you. But I think probably about 95% of players probably will not enjoy them. So I'm just going to give you a heads up and say, if that doesn't sound awesome, then avoid that. Like you said, you'll know when you get to it because you'll be controlling Sam. And then you can just be like, oh, okay, I won't do this. Now, there's one piece of feedback I have for the developers, if you guys happen to watch this. You do have one puzzle I found so far, and I haven't completed the game yet. And this will be a partial spoiler on a puzzle, but I feel like this one kind of deserves to be spoiled a tiny bit. Because the developers, you guys broke one of the rules of things you shouldn't do. You got obsessed with trying to make your puzzles really good, and at some point you got in the mentality of trying to beat the player, not give the player something interesting to defeat, right? And that is specifically, there is a puzzle where you have to locate a piece of paper that has some information. And as soon as I describe all this out loud, I think everyone will agree this is not how you do this. So there's a piece of paper you have to find, but it is partially displaced underneath a wall asset, to make it like really, really, really hard to see. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is the interaction range, which if you see right here, you see the exclamation point. When you get close to something you can interact with, that little exclamation point pops up to say, hey, here's an interactable. And then you can get closer. On this particular piece of paper, that exclamation interaction zone was shrunk down and made shorter than everything else in the game, which is inconsistency, and that is essentially lying to the player. This was done intentionally to deceive the player to beat them, so that they had to maybe find some other piece of paper as something first. I spent an hour trying to figure out if I was even supposed to be, if it was even a puzzle I was looking at. I had to ask people in my chat who had played the game before. I was like, is this even a puzzle? Am I supposed to be here? And somebody who was familiar with the game said, yeah, this is a puzzle. And then with a little help, I was able to figure it out. But I had to have help from outside the game to get that one. And it was very unsatisfying to find out that the reason I was struggling is because I swept the room looking for interactables aware of the normal interaction range. So when that was shrunk intentionally to deceive me as a player for the rules of the game were changed without telling me, the player, that the rules had changed. So that is what you call like an unfair puzzle. So I would say don't do that. But that's also like the biggest mistake in the game, and that's not a huge mistake, honestly. The rest of the game is fantastic. So just that one little caveat, like if you're, or any game developer, if you're doing puzzle games, just try to, be aware that mentality can creep up where you get really proud of these really intricate puzzles, and the puzzles in this game are intricate, and I would be proud of them if I had made them. But, after a while, you kind of get like where you want the puzzle to win almost, right? Because you get obsessed with making them like really clever, and then you start trying to beat the player without realizing it. So just be aware of that pitfall if you're any kind of game developer. But that is a very minor, issue, I think, at this point. And that lone piece of paper, in my opinion, doesn't really detract from the rest of the game. It's fantastic. I plan on eventually doing a full playthrough, and that VOD will go up here on the YouTube channel as well. But definitely recommend giving it a playthrough yourself before I get that VOD up. Like, it's just a fantastic game, and it's really cool. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to give you a heads up on with this review, and that's that there's two difficulty modes. One is detective mode. In detective mode, the game does not keep track of notes, doesn't give you a mini-map, it gives you nothing. You'll have to keep track of notes yourself, take pictures of the screen with your phone if you need to. And that's kind of a really cool element, and it makes it more immersive, like a lot more immersive. And that's the route I chose. But I regret choosing it about halfway through, and there's no way to switch back once you've chose that route. And the problem I'm running into is that I'm a content creator and I've got multiple games on my plate at any given time. So I'm not playing Fear of Enigma all the way through in one sitting, or, within like where I just play this game. So I could not keep track of everything that's going on. And I did not start out keeping like real diligent notes because I just did not realize how in depth the puzzles were and how much I was going to have to move around in the game world and backtrack because some information is like over here, but it pertains to an area over here, stuff like that. So again, unless you really love the whole like needle in a haystack thing, or you really like the idea of maybe spending a month on this game and then like keeping lots of records and stuff, which again, there are some people who do and absolutely love it. If you're looking for a game that just has these really crazy in-depth puzzles and even has a setting to make it so that you have to be, an actual detective in on this stuff, this is your game. Now, if you like the in-depth puzzles, but you don't like all the keeping track of stuff, just pick the normal game mode and it'll behave like a normal modern game in 2024 where it will keep track of things that you have found, which again is great if you take a little bit of break from the game or you haven't just kept like exhaustive notes, right? So yeah, that basically wraps this up. It's a fantastic game, highly recommend. There's the only real caveats or feedbacks I have for the game, and again, one of them is just completely optional and you can just skip, so it isn't even really a problem. And it's there for people who maybe love the idea that there are just some insane puzzles hidden in the game, right? Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here before this gets too long. I'll have, again, reminder, I'll have the whole VOD coming up eventually, but yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.